Want to welcome our first guest. We've got Rob Prazmark on the line. Rob is the president and CEO of 21 Sports and Entertainment Marketing Group, really one of the most highly regarded executives in the Olympic movement. Is really one of the most influential people in the sports marketing world, and certainly in the Olympic world. Has worked for the International Olympic Committee, was part of the team that created and sold the original high-level Olympic sponsorship program. Did that for a long time for the International Olympic Committee, known as top sponsors, and now he and his U.S.-based company, 21 Sports and Entertainment Marketing, do a lot of work for lead sponsors for the International Olympic Committee, creating all sorts of innovative programs, and beyond that, does some work outside of sports as well. Pleased to have Rob Prazmark join me here on the Wharton Sports Business Show. Rob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. You know, we're out of New York and Greenwich, Connecticut, and I'm sure it's warmer there where you are than it is here, but surviving the day. Surviving the day
is right. And thanks so much for taking the time to join us. So this week is the 1-year marker until the Olympic Games in Rio. Seems hard to believe. But tomorrow, NBC is planning its promotional trailer to air across all 18 platforms simultaneously.
Right.
So the sponsors, is this the official kickoff to Olympic marketing season, or is this still a bit premature?
Well, it is. It all depends on what company you're talking about. I mean, for many of the global partners and for the partners in Rio, it's been going on since they either signed on or Rio won the bid probably about 6 or 7 years ago. So I happened to be in Copenhagen and when they awarded to Rio, and of course everyone thought Chicago was going to get the 2016 games, and they were blown out of the water. Even though our commander-in-chief was over there and did a command performance, Chicago lost and Rio won. Rio's presentation was spectacular. You knew they were going to win the day. At the time, their economy was just on a rocket ride. And, of course, it's now slowed up a little bit or a lot. But, the sponsors are there supporting it. Now, traditional sponsors, to your point about a year out, that's when the drumbeat starts, especially here in the United States. What companies like to do when they market in America is to follow NBC or the Olympic broadcaster, and for the rest of my life it'll be NBC. So it starts now, and they'll follow what NBC's doing. But around the world, again, it depends on who the sponsor is. And I know we're going to end up talking about Beijing, but some of these companies like GE, who are a business-to-government, business-to-business sponsor in the Olympic world, their effort goes on every day. So it's not just a consumer-driven commodity.
Right, and so interesting news today that Omega, which is one of the top sponsors, right, is typically had, and traditionally, as long as I can remember, had the countdown clock that they decided not to activate around this year, and instead are going to do some initiatives in Rio between now and the start of the games. Omega's the official Olympics timekeeper. And what were your thoughts around that? That was kind of interesting.
They have traditionally done that. In fact, all the timing partners have done it, not just Omega, but there was a couple of years when Seiko was the sponsor in there, and they did it as well. You get different people that come in and say, look, we've been doing it. It's nice. It's a nice to have, but let's do something different. And so what they do is some of these practices can get a little tired over the years, and you get new management in there and say, let's think differently. And so I'm sure that this group just said, hey, let's do something different, and that's the reason why they abandoned the clock.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I mean, there's certainly the social movement to it, the charitable projects that they'll be involved in the various 12 different Rio neighborhoods, donating 16 cents through a social media campaign for every user that creates a heart symbol and
right,
uses the hashtag Omega Viva Rio. So it's kind of an interesting and different approach.
Yeah, there's definitely kind of corporate social responsibility going down in Rio and all over Brazil. The favelas down there are quite infamous and famous, and so they're kind of in transition. Rio won the games in many ways of saying the fact that they use Pele as an example of here is a person who grew up in the slums, the favelas of I believe Santiago, but yet he used sport to escape and led a great life. And so they won the bid, Rio did, by saying this is an opportunity for us to change the destiny of our city and our country by using sports as a way to elevate, young children and people and have something to aspire to, which really is the Olympic ideals going forward.
Absolutely. So while we're on the topic of Rio, you mentioned the economy, and I'd imagine the difficulty there is going to be more along the lines, and you mentioned obviously these things are awarded so far out in advance, 7 years in advance, and it's hard to see in 2009 that the Brazil economy would fall apart to the degree that it has. It wasn't hard to see that it would slow down, but it was very hard to see that it would really fall apart to the degree that it has. How does that impact games preparation, and how does it affect the local organizing committee for Rio?
Well, the budgets and the game plan is put together, like you said, way back in. While we were going through our recession and falling apart, Brazil was on fire, right?
Right.
So they set their budgets and set their contracts and move forward under those scenarios. Where it may affect them in the revenue may be ticketing. I mean, the fact that they still have to charge for tickets, and tickets it's not the premier events; those things will be sold out. The swimming finals and opening ceremonies. It's the real bread and butter, or where the rubber meets the road. Is will they fill stadiums and areas that may not attract everybody? I mean, believe it or not, track and field, or what they call athletics, it's not sold out every day. So the economy may affect ticketing to sell out every ticket, which is going to be, I think, difficult to do. But at the end of the day, they've made their numbers. The television revenue contracts were signed years and years and years ago, so they have a pretty good, healthy stream of revenue from global television. They've got, like you mentioned, they've got the global partners that put in their money for the right to associate. If anything, I've heard of some of these companies may have cut back on hospitality programs, but that has nothing to do with the organizing committee because you have to commit to the hotel rooms and the tickets years in advance. So it's not going to affect the economics of the organizing committee. It may affect the local economy a little bit, but it's not going to be, I don't see them writing off the Olympic Games by any way financially.
Right. So it's been a pretty interesting couple of weeks in the Olympic space here in the United States, with the Boston bid being, I guess, stepping back, being canceled, however you want to phrase it, the USOC, withdrawing that.
Right.
And so, the first question is LA going to be the city if a bid is put forth at all?
Simple question, complicated answer. And I will do this the best I can, understanding that your show will be listened to many of the people who I do business with every day at the United States Olympic Committee and the International Olympic Committee. Boston was a very classic example, in my opinion, of certain groups not doing their research ahead of time to say the fact that would the population support the bid going forward. When you compare that to London had, after they were awarded the games, London had the polls that would come out and say, we're not really crazy about this, we should never have won it. But they had the support going into it, and that's the reason why they won it, and they won a very organized Paris bid. Boston, from day one, the population, even the corporate community, did not really want it. And it kind of unraveled. And now the USOC is in a very difficult position because if they put forth another city, does that city say, like Los Angeles, well, you know what? You didn't want us in the first place. Do we really want this? Okay, that's one. And number two is, how does that look to the people who vote for the Olympic Games, the International Olympic Committee, which are there are 100 plus members? Is the United States Olympic Committee, really organized to get behind this effort, or is the better decision to say, we need to reassess our situation, meaning USOC, how our next bids for 2026 or 2028 will fit better into Agenda 2020, which is the IOC's new mandate, and just take a step back and go forward. The other thing that USOC has to think through in Los Angeles or whatever city they put up is right now Paris has a massive bid going on. I mean, they took a national poll, and the majority of people living in France are behind this. And they didn't have that support back when they bid for, 2012. But now they've got a total nationalistic support of Paris going forward for 2024. They're going to be a tough one to beat. Then you've got Toronto, which takes advantage of the Eastern time zone for television. If they approve it, will be a very strong candidate as well. So LA isn't a slam dunk if all of a sudden they become, hey, it's going to be Los Angeles. Personally, I think what they ought to do is take a timeout, meaning USOC, take a timeout and say, let's get this right. Let's not rush to judgment here. Let's not rush to put up a substitute city, even though Thomas Bach wants them to do that. And just say, let's do this right. So that would be what I think should happen. I don't know if it will happen, but that's what should happen.
And it makes complete sense. How does the USOC bounce back from Boston? I know you work in this space, and it's a little tricky. If you were running the USOC instead of the powers that be, Scott Blackman, who's done a terrific job with them, it seems like the best strategy would be to back up, as you mentioned, and then wind up saying, let's go for 28, right, or 26. Based on the bidding for 22 for the Beijing games, Winter Games that were just awarded, it would seem like 2026 would be a very strong candidate for the U.S. or 2028, as opposed to getting into a really crowded field.
Yeah, you're right. And Scott's a personal friend. I've known him for a long, long, long time. And Larry, both those guys are really smart guys. Yeah. But I think that what they did was very smart. Is they did not say, "Hey, I want Boston." They had a committee that selected Boston, and they are tremendous managers. And they felt under advice and counsel of that committee that indeed they had the support of the people of Boston going forward. Like I said earlier, I think it would be very prudent, and the wise thing to do is take a step back. Don't rush to judgment. Put up a city who could become kind of a sacrificial lamb at the end of the day because they're getting in late. And as much as LA's got, the Olympic history and 3 times and, all that kind of stuff, I think the right thing is to take a step back. The other advantages of going for 2026, the Winter Games are much easier to manage, and because they're maybe 70% the size of the Summer Games, or 65%, you don't have quite the security problems that you do during the Winter Games, and it may be better off for them to go for Winter versus Summer, and there's a lot of advantages to that. So that's my feeling on it. I'm not on the committee, but that would be my recommendation to them.
And then, no, that completely makes sense. And then your thoughts on 2022, the Winter Games announced for Beijing?
I lived through, when they awarded Beijing. I lived through when Beijing was supposed to get 2,000, and Sydney got 2,000 because of irregularity in the voting, which has been corrected. I don't use the S word anymore. So, and they won it, and it was good that they did not win 2,000 because they weren't ready. Then they went off and they won 2008, and you could see the transformation, from a transparency issue. And I don't want to get into the human rights thing, but they had to do things that they were not used to doing, and they had to deal with the media unlike they've I still think they threw the best games ever. Those opening ceremonies were just, in closing, I still think that they were the best. And there was no incidences. I mean, it was well-run, well-orchestrated games. And the sponsors were big winners. GE, I think Immelt went public saying they wrote about $1 billion worth of incremental contracts because of their Olympic sponsorship. The Olympic Organizing Committee is really a governmental agency. The government is run by the Communist Party. I mean, they just opened doors and were able to do business as a Western company doing business in China. Johnson & Johnson the same way. They used the relationship with Beijing 2008 to show the Department of Health and show the people of China that they were a Chinese company. They may have been, over here in America, but the fact that they cared about the people of China. And the story goes on and on and on. Volkswagen, sold billions of extra dollars worth of cars. So I think Beijing 2022 will be a spectacular games. They will build that bullet train, and the thing will be done on time. And I think that's what will make these games extremely good. It is bizarre for me to think that the same city could host a winter and summer. It is bizarre to me. Sorry if I'm running along here. It is bizarre to me that you have three games. You got Pyeongchang, which people tend to forget about. Tokyo, which is going to be phenomenal. Then you got Beijing. Three Asian markets together. I've never seen that before.
That flies in the face of the typical and traditional shifting of hemispheres.
Yeah, rotational. Yeah, absolutely.
But then one would argue then that then makes 2026, 2028 ripe for the picking by a strong USOC bid.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it would also make 2024 much more attractive. Because it'll never go to Asia. It won't go anywhere near Asia. You got to come on the rotational basis, either Europe or rotational basis, North America. But it's unfortunate that Boston happened the way it happened. But that's going to be a big hill to climb.
Yeah, no question about that. Hey, Rob, we need to let you go. Thanks so much for coming on, sharing your expertise with us. We'd love to have you back in the future and discuss Olympic marketing and marketing of large international sports events further. We've been joined by Rob Prazmark, the president and CEO of 21 Sports Entertainment Marketing Group here on the Wharton Sports Business Show. Rob, thanks so much. We need to take a short break, and we'll be right back with our next guest, Lee Burke from LHB Sports Media and Entertainment here on the Wharton Sports Business Show, Sirius XM 111 Business Radio.